Sheikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, what he's saying, he said, قال شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله واعلم أن آمة البدع المتعلقة بالعلوم والعبادات إنما وقع في الأمة في أواخر الخلفاء الراشدين كما أخبر به النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حيث قال من يعش منكم فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا فعليكم بسنتي وسنة خلفاء الراشدين المهديين بعدي عدوا عليه بالنواجذ. This is the speech of Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah quoting Prophet Muhammad. He said, "Man ya'ishu minkum fasayara ikhtilafan kathira." So here is actually talking about the causes and the emergence of bid'ah. How did we come across, or how did it come about bid'ah? How did it come about innovation in the words in the religion of Islam? Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, anyone among you, it was actually addressing his Sahaba at the time, anyone among you that live long, anyone among you that Allah bless with long life, sayara ikhtilafan kathira, is going to see a lot of differences, is going to see a lot of discrepancies, is going to see a lot of ikhtilaf. So we should note here that Prophet specifically mentioned the word what? Ikhtilaf. And the ikhtilaf that is mentioned by Prophet Salah. So when he wants to advise the Sahaba, he said, "Alaykum bi sunnati wa sunnati al-khulafa'i ar-rashidin al-mahdiyin." So in other words, you should not be part of what? Ikhtilaf. You should only be part of what? My sunnah. So here, the ikhtilaf that is being mentioned here specifically is actually talking about what? Bid'ah. And that is very similar to the origin of the bid'ah in the history of mankind, in the history of humanity. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah said, كَانَ النَّاسُ هُمَّةً وَاحِدًا فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّينَ مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ وَأَنزَلَ مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ لِيَحْكُمَ النَّاسَ بِمَا فِيمَا اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ. So Allah said, mankind was originally one ummah. Originally, the ummah was one. And when Quran said they were one ummah, what it is actually talking about was that there was no differences. There was no ikhtilaf. Because he said, then later on Allah sent messenger, I will refill book with them so that it will solve the problem of ikhtilaf they fall into. So from here we know that even this verse in the Quran, when it says ikhtilaf here, it's actually referring to what? It's referring to bid'ah. So the meaning is that when people are on the right path, when people follow the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to the hadith of Prophet by Abdul ibn Abbas, he said between Prophet Nuh and Prophet Adam, there are 10 good generations between them, and there was none among them that they fell from the right path. And that was why Allah did not send any messenger, nor did he send or reveal any book, because there was no need. So sending of messenger and revelation of book was necessary because of bid'ah. Sending of book and sending of messenger and revelation of book was necessary because of what? Because of deviation, because people started to what? To follow a different path that is different from the path of Allah and His messenger. So now we understand that a khilaf that is being referred to here in this verse and even in this hadith of Prophet Salah is talking about what? Al-Bid'ah. And that is why scholars, they look at the ikhtilaf, they divide it into 5 different types. They say ikhtilaf, that is the type of bid'ah we are talking about, and especially the first origin, we can classify them broadly into 5 categories. They say the first one is what we call ikhtilaf what? Tawqiri. We have what is called ikhtilaf tawqiri, and this is called sanctioned ikhtilaf. Before we go to the classification, so if you look at the word ikhtilaf, it is originally derived from the word khalafa. And khalafa means for something to come after or to follow another thing. And that is the same word from where the word khalifa or khulafahu is what? Or khilafa. That is the same word it was derived. So originally the word, it means something that comes, or something that what? That succeeds, or something that comes after some another thing. Like Allah mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. In Nijal what? So the word originally means something that comes after another thing. But when it is used in this form ikhtilaf, it can actually mean different things. One of the meanings is that variation and diversity and multiplicity. And this is valid, and this is part of the system of Allah. variation, diversity, or differences. This is part of what? System of Allah. Like Allah said, He make our color, our language, and our creation to be what? To be different. It is a form of ikhtilaf. So, and this is part of the what? It is part of the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like Allah made some of us to be black, some to be white, some to be dark, some to be blonde, and so on and so forth. It's a kind of what? Ikhtilaf. And it's a commended way because it's part of the creation of Allah. So ikhtilaf can also mean so something to be different from another thing in a defined manner, in the way Allah wants it. And ikhtilaf in this context, it actually means a part or a container to be different from the original part. And if you want to create an image from this, so look at the original one, you say it is mean what? Khalafa. It means a difference that comes after the original what? The original part. You know that the part of Allah is always the first part. Like when Allah created the being, He said, "Inni ja'ilun fil ardi mother." Then when Adam was on the part on the earth surface, he was there for good 10 centuries, and there was no differences, there was no violation, there was no deviation. Everybody was doing the right thing. They were on fitra. Then later, when fitra changed, when ikhtilaf come, when bid'ah come, then Allah sent what? He sent messenger. So ikhtilaf in this case, it actually means deviation from the right path, from the siratul mustaqim. And it is this form of ikhtilaf we call what? We call bid'ah. And like I mentioned, they divide it into 5. The first time they call it what? They call it ikhtilafu what? At-tawqi'i. That is sanctioned ikhtilaf or sanctioned difference. So in other words, there are some differences that are actually valid and that are correct and they are commendable. Like we have the madhahib in the religion. We have different school of thought, and this is actually based on what? Differences in the legal interpretation of the text or the interpretation of the text of the Quran or Hadith. And this is actually valid as long as it does not differ from the fundamental text itself. And that is why we have different madhahib. That a madhab will say, this is my view. Another madhab will say what? This is my view. And this form of ikhtilaf is what is called what? Ikhtilaf what? Tawqi'i. And this is commendable, like I said. It is sanctioned. It is actually defined. It is one of something that is commendable. And it is actually what Prophet Salah was referring to when he said, his ummah, they will not have a consensus on the land. That is on misguidance. So the second part of ikhtilaf, according to the scholar, is the one we call what? Is the one we call ikhtilaf al-adadi. Ikhtilaf al-adadi means numerical differences. And numerical differences, what made them to give this form of ikhtilaf or this form of definition was that so there are some group of people that emerged, especially after the 3rd century. You know, the first 3 centuries, Prophet referred to them as what? Qurun al-Mufaddala. These are what? These are golden age of Muslims. He said, Khairul Qurni, Ayrul Quruni Qarni thumma alladhina, unto the end. So this ikhtilaf al-adadi is just like some group of people, they agree, you know, these differences actually started about issue that has to do with Tawhid. Issue that has to do with Tawhid Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Issue that has to do with what? Belief system in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are some group of people that believe in some of the attributes and nature of Allah, but they dispute or they have difference of view concerning the details or concerning the true nature of this attribute. For example, the attribute of what? Allah as in what is the Khaliq, is the creator. So some group of people believe that this attribute of Allah is intrinsic and it is just like Allah is Asaliyu Abadi. So even those qualities, they were actually what? Habadi. In other words, they were eternity, they were backward in eternity and they are forward in eternity. In other words, they don't have beginning and they don't have what? When they say Allah is Khaliq, He did not become Khaliq the day He creates. He did not become a creator the day what? He has always been a what? A creator. And He did not create because He needs to what? He needs the creation. It is actually because it is part of His attribute. So some people actually believe in this part of Allah, in this part of attribute of Allah, that this is the nature of the attribute of Allah. Is what is Khaliq. While some people say no, Allah only become Khaliq the time He started to create. In other words, they have changed the attribute of Allah from being eternal to be what? To be, they are taken to be temporal. That has to do with time. So, and this is the difference, and this is the type of ikhtilaf they call what? They call adadi. In other words, he's trying to give details or understanding. And like we mentioned yesterday, this is an area where majority of people fall into bid'ah, and this is the origin of bid'ah in Islam itself. This is the origin of bid'ah in Islam itself, and this is actually very dangerous, because this description, the first group, they are actually correct, because the aqidah of Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah about the attributes, the sifatullah wa asmahi, and his af'al is that whenever Allah tells us that He does this, we will believe in it without giving it what? Kayfiyya, or we do tashbih, or tanfil, or ta'til. So we just believe in it the way it says. Like Allah said, He descends to the first heaven every night in order to forgive. He asks who wants to be forgiven, who wants his prayer to be answered, isn't it? So if you put it into your knowledge or into your view, if you create an image that how does Allah, you will actually fail. So that for the Ahl-Sunnah, we know this hadith is authentic and is what is correct. We believe that Allah does what He descends the way He said. The kayfiyya of His descent we don't know, and we don't ask about it. Like we talked about what? We talked about istiwa yesterday. So when Imam Malik was asked that, how is the istiwa of Allah? When Allah said Ar-Rahman ala al-Arshi, then somebody asked that how is the istiwa? He said, this your statement alone is bid'ah. He said, wasuhalu anhu, to ask about istiwa. In other words, if you want to believe in the istiwa of Allah, and like we mentioned, why don't we need to know how? Is it that Allah cannot be known? Or is it that we don't deserve to know it? We mentioned it yesterday. The reason is that we want to know, we are limited in every space. We are limited in every aspect. We are limited in every ramification. And Allah that we want to know is unlimited. When Prophet Musa, when he had the face of Allah, he wished to what? To also see who? To also see Allah. He said, Rabbi, arini anzuru ilayk. Allah said, lan tarani. It is impossible for you to see me. Why can't Musa see Allah? Is it because Allah doesn't want you to see him? So Allah now show him the reason why he cannot see him. Allah said, wala tanzuru ila what? Ila al-jabal. Fa in istaqarra makanahu. If this mountain remain in its position, then you will see me. The reason why you cannot see me is not because you cannot, I don't want you to see me. It's because you don't have the quality to see me. It's because you don't possess ability to what? So Allah said, for you to understand what I'm saying, فَلَمَّ تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ لِلْجَبَلِ. What happened? When Allah shone His light to the Jabal crumbled. It crumbled into pieces. Even the word of Allah cannot be borne by what? By the Jabal. لَوْ أَنزَلْنَا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ عَلَى جَبَلٍ لَرَأَيْتَهُ خَاشِعًا مُتَصَدِّعًا مِنْهُ. So what about the light of Allah? He said, hijabuhu nur. So because of this nur, is like one of these. He said, if Allah is to remove this nur, this hijab, everything in creation, they get ablaze. They will be set ablaze by the nur of Allah. So which means we will not be able to see it. It's a what? It's a rahmah. It's because Allah is protected. It's out of the rahmah. The same thing when we cannot be able to know the reality or the true nature of Allah is because we don't possess that quality. We don't have it. When we say something is unlimited and something that is limited want to comprehend, is it comprehensible? You cannot. Even if you are to describe the Arshu of Allah, wallahi, nobody can understand it. Arshu is even school, we are going far. When we say about that, even when we want to understand the size of the seven heaven, first up to the seven heaven, wallahi, no human being can comprehend it. Do you know this first heaven alone? The first heaven alone. The first heaven alone. And that is the what? That is the house of the what? Of the stars. So which means it is only the Sama Dunya that have what? And this Sama Dunya, the science they call it observable universe. Even this observable universe is just a fraction of the universe, just a fraction of the first heaven. The whole of the first heaven, there is a part we can observe. There is a part we cannot observe. The part we can observe is far less than the part we can observe. And we are talking about what? Just the first heaven. And this first heaven, when the scientists they were talking about it, they said this observable universe you are looking at, they said it contains 2 trillion galaxies. Can you explain what is 2 trillion galaxies? We are talking of just observable universe, not even the whole universe, which is the first heaven. What about if you go to the second heaven? What about the third heaven? What about the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh? And when I did for the Prophet, you know, we are just talking about galaxy. I know some of you may not even understand what a galaxy is. You see, we said 2 trillion galaxies, isn't it? But in each galaxy, we have as much as, depending on the type of galaxy, we have as much as what? 400 billion or 200 billions of what? Of star systems. The smallest galaxy of all the galaxy 2 trillion we mentioned is our galaxy to which we belong. And which is the what? The Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way galaxy, if you want to move from the beginning of the Milky Way galaxy to the end of the Milky Way galaxy, you will spend 9 billion light years. No, 92 billion light years. Do you know the meaning of light year? The time it takes light to travel for 1 year. Do you know how fast light is? Light covers 300,000 kilometers in 1 second. Not 1 minute. In 1 second, light it covers what? 300,000 kilometers, not meter. No, if light covers 300,000 kilometers in 1 second, how many kilometers will it cover in a year? So now, if you say 92 billion years, how many? What, can you imagine the distance? And what are we talking about? The smallest galaxy, Milky Way galaxy. How many galaxies do you say we have? If that is the smallest, now can you imagine the biggest galaxy? Can you imagine the number of galaxies? And all of these things we are talking about, they are where? Observable. We are not even talking about the unobservable, which is far more than the observable. Now, all of what we are talking about is where? First heaven. Now, if you are to now look at the description of Prophet. He said, if you want to describe the 7th heaven, the whole of 7th heaven, and every other thing, if you want to compare it to the Arsh of Allah, Allah said, he said, Wasi'a Kursiyyuhu. Do you know the meaning of Wasi'a? Wasi'a is when something is big, is fast, and it contains every other thing. Now, how is the containment of the Arsh of the 7th heaven and earth? How does the Arsh contain 7th heaven and earth? Do you understand how it's contained? You understand how? Prophet described it to us. When Allah says, Wasi'a Kursiyyuhu Samawati wal what? He's saying that it's Kursi. It contains the combination of the 7 heaven and the 7 what? All of them put together. If you put them in the Arsh to contain them. Do you understand the meaning of containment? Prophet said the containment is such that if you have a coin, if you want to understand how is the Arsh contained the what? The Kursi rather. You want to understand how it contained it. He said it's just like when you throw a coin. You know a coin, a money. If you throw it into a desert, that is the comparison of the 7th heaven and earth to the what? To the Kursi. Now I want to ask you a question. Can you still understand the size of that Kursi? We are even going far. Can you even understand the size of this observable universe we are talking about? Now, this Kursi that is as big as this that we cannot even understand. Prophet said that Kursi, if you compare it to what? To the Arsh of Allah, it's just like you also throw a coin into where? Into desert. Now, I want to ask a question again. Can you still understand? Are you still getting anything? Are you still understanding it? So this is just the creation of Allah that you cannot even understand. You cannot even comprehend. It's beyond your comprehension. It's beyond your understanding. What about Allah Himself? What about Allah Himself? That is why when Allah says He has these attributes, He has this quality, no meaning, and we believe in it without what? Without takyif, without ta'til, without tanfil, without tashbih. You don't like it because nothing. You know, look at the way we describe all these things. Do you now think of anything that can resemble Allah? Do you imagine anything that can have likeness to Allah? Is there anything that can have the same quality like that quality of Allah? Allah said, "Laisa kamithlihi wa huwa." Allah said, "There's nothing unlike Him. There's nothing like Him. There's nothing that is comparable to Him. You can never see anything in existence." And because of that, when Allah says He has a quality, even if it is quality we know or we have, you cannot and should not in any way compare it to what? To that of Allah, because they are not comparable. They are two different things entirely. So what is requested of us or required of us is to what? To believe in it, that Allah have it, because Allah mentioned in the Quran or Prophet told us in what? In a Sunnah, and that is what is required of us. So now these people that fall into this ikhtilaf of al-adadi, like we mentioned, they are trying to give details about the quality or attribute of Allah. Wallahi, anytime you attempt to do that, you fail. You can't describe Allah. Nobody has that ability. So if you look at something now, so there's limit to what your eye can see. The same way your eyes is limited, even your brain has limits. Allah Himself that you want to describe, He has no what? So how can you describe Him? So you can only limit yourself to what He says about Himself. So anytime anybody attempt to describe Allah or to give Allah any description, you will always fail. And we have just understood, we have just seen the reason why it will fail, or the reason why it's going to lead to failure, isn't it? So when we say even the creation of Allah as arshu, as what? You know, we have just described the seventh heaven. You know the distance between first heaven and the seventh heaven, first and second heaven. You know, we have just described it. According to the hadith, it said between the first heaven and the seventh heaven, there is a distance of 500 years journey. If you want to move from second to the third, 500, up to the seventh, always there is this distance of what? 500 years journey. And that is just inter-heaven distance. Even in one heaven, if you want to move from the beginning of an heaven to what? To the end of that same heaven, you will still spend what? 500 years. In other words, if you start from the beginning of the first heaven, before you can leave the first heaven to the space between them, you spend 500 years. And the seventh heaven is the highest heaven, isn't it? Between the seventh heaven, there is a space, and that space, between the seventh heaven, which is the highest heaven, isn't it? So between that seventh heaven, there is a space between that place and a place that is all water. All what? No, before then, there is a space between the seventh heaven and another space. And that space is just, the distance between that space is just the total distance between all the seven heaven and all the seven hearts. I don't know whether I understand that statement. You know, when they say Allah fi samahi, some people may understand that Allah is in the heaven. No, Allah is not in the heaven. The heaven, the ulu of Allah is al-mutlaq. That is above, is high. But it does not mean, look at the description again. He said, if you want to know from the seventh heaven, the end of the seventh heaven, there's a space, there's a particular location. So if you want to go to that place, you have to add all the total distance of all the seven heaven and all the total distance of the what? The seven heart. Add them together. That is what will take you to that particular space. Then after that space, there's another space from that one to what? To another place. That is the water. You know Allah said, Wakana Arshu. There's a water, and that water is massive. It's even more than even the Quraysh we are talking about. Nobody can imagine the size of the water. Then above that, there's Arsh of Allah. And the Arsh is what we have just described. Even the creation of Allah, you cannot understand them. We are even going far, going to what? Going to some of the creation of Allah. Even among the angels. So none of you, when Prophet Salah was describing angel Jibril, when he saw him in his true nature 2 different times. The first time is when he came down in order to give him to refill the Surah Al-Mudaththir to him. So he was on the horizon, was in the heaven. Our Prophet said he has 600 wings, and his wings cover everywhere in the horizon. And that is Jibreel. And when Prophet mentioned one of this, he said Allah has permitted him to describe the word, the Amalatul Arsh. Like Allah mentioned in Surah Al-Ghafir, that the Amalatul Arsh, their head is touching up to the seventh heaven, and their feet is touching up to the what? To the seventh earth. And the distance between their neck to the end of their shoulder is the distance of a what? 700 years journey. That is just a creation of Allah. So if even the creation of Allah we cannot understand, Israfil is the angel that has been instructed, that has been given the assignment of what? Of blowing the what? The sur. So since the time he has been instructed, he has been taught, he placed the sur on his mouth and is looking at the direction of the word al-ash, so that when the instruction comes, it will not be caught unaware. And the sur is bigger than even this planet. So now, can you still understand that? So if you cannot even understand some of the creation of Allah, how can you understand Allah himself? So it's beyond human understanding. It's beyond human comprehension. Allah is beyond everything you can imagine. And that is why anything that comes to your heart as to the nature of Allah is against the reality. That is, Allah is not what you think you are. That is why you should not and you cannot in any way create image of Allah in your heart. If you do that, if Allah says you have Yabdullah Fawqa, or if Allah says he has anything he has, don't even create image of that thing in your mind. If you do, you'll be creating a sonam. You'll be creating an idol, and you'll be worshipping it. And creating an idol means you have given Allah attribute or quality that is not of Allah, that doesn't belong to Allah. So the way and the manner in which we are supposed to believe in it is that Allah says he has it, and we believe he has it. But how does it look? What is to what extent? We cannot even understand. We don't even know the nature. And that does not resemble what he creates. There's no limit to his power. There's no limit to his knowledge. And nothing weighing him down. He does not get tired. He does not have to do he does not have to exercise any effort in order to create anything that we want to create. You know, Allah created the universe, like we have mentioned, and he created the smallest thing. The time it takes Allah to create the greatest thing is the same time it takes him to create even the smallest thing. There's no difference. If there's no difference in the energy, there's no difference in the time, there's no difference in what is spent in order to create it. Because anything he wants to do, he only requires Allah to say what? That is all. And the thing will be with immediate effect. If Allah says all the seven heaven and the seven earth and whatever is in existence should get destroyed within a microsecond, it will be done and nothing will stop it. If Allah intends to do something, no matter how big or how massive the thing is, it only required Allah to say what? Kun. That's all. And everything will fall into its position. So this same Allah, can we still compare him to anything? Is it comparable to anything? So when Allah said, "Kana nasu ummatan wahida, fab'atha Allahu nabiyyina mubashirin wa munzirin, wa anzala ma'ahum al-kitab liyahkuma an-nasa fima ikhtalafu fi." So when people started to deviate, to introduce something that is different from His law, it's because we don't actually understand who is Allah. Allah is such a being that nobody dare disobey. Allah is such a being that nobody should disrespect or to dishonor. And that is why this description of this type of bid'ah we have just mentioned about the other day is actually violation of the word of the attribute of Allah. Because even you attempting to do that is violation of his nature. You don't even attempt to